Laws fluctuate, and they vary depending on the venue. And for instance, you can pretty much use a photograph of anyone you want in a magazine, as long as it's not in a defamatory context. For instance, if there was one instance where somebody used a photo of a woman who was not a homeless person, but the article was about homeless people. She just looked dirty or something. I don't know what it was. And a lawsuit ensued. So it depends on the context when you're using it. The same sort of applies for books in terms of book publications. Basically, the one rule, which is kind of hard and fast, is that if the photographs are used for commercial gain, i.e. advertising. For instance, if this photo here, and the other thing is whether the person is recognizable. So this photo here, obviously he's all blurry, I can use it, but the bar itself, if we use this in an ad, in a Harley-Davidson ad, the bar owners might come and say, hey, you never got our permission, we want a piece of the pie, that kind of thing. So it really depends on the context and whether the people are recognizable and how they appear. Did I answer the question? More or less? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, let me just follow it through a little bit. I'm thinking more of this question, this ethical question of you're going into subcultures and you're documenting them, and this idea just in a larger sense of photography of, how much manipulation does the photographer have or not, or how much do you let yourself do that? And if we can maybe define documentary photography and other sort of more fine arts photography, that's a fine line. And
sure. I mean, these projects like Bike Week, Drag Queens, that sort of thing, they're kind of defined in that I know what I want. And Drag Queen's a little different in that it was for a magazine. The drag queens get something out of it. They, at the end of once the magazine is published, the drag queens that are in the publication will obviously get the publicity. They're performers. But they also get, from me, one of our agreements was that they would all get photographs. So there it's kind of like an even trade. They're getting something out of it. They don't feel manipulated. They don't feel, I'm abusing the photos or themselves, or whatever. But some of these photos, I could understand, how a drunk biker who's there with his friends does something a little bit outrageous and gets caught on film and then regrets it later. But there is a bit of a moral issue. I'm not taking pictures to make fun of these people, but sometimes they look like train wrecks. I mean, it's, admittedly there are photos that if it was me, I wouldn't want to be in a book. I wouldn't want to be doing that kind of thing. So there is a bit of a gray area. I mean, I try and be respectful when I'm taking pictures. I try to kind of get to the root of it. What Bike Week is about, in that I'm not just there to photograph, wet T-shirt contests. I'm trying to show the whole scope of it. You get 500,000 people in one place, and they're doing completely ridiculous things with or without alcohol. So it's, I'm trying to show the overall experience of it, not just be exploitive in terms of photograph people at their worst, that kind of thing. The same thing when some of the travel work, some of the shots you saw were from Guatemala, Italy, India, Morocco, and a number of other places. And some of it was shot commercially for in-flight magazines, the magazines you get when you fly on a plane. Some of it was shot for advertising, some was shot for tourist boards. There's a fine line. The magazines want postcards, they really do. And the tourist boards want postcards. And I'm trying to treat it, I'm trying to shoot a little better than postcards and sort of shoot artistic images that I like and I'm happy with, but there's a gray area because the clients, usually skip over all those photos and go for the postcards. But at the same time, I'm trying to show something a little more real, the real experience of being in the country, and that has to do with, on some level, I'm trying to respect the culture that I'm invading. You know, I mean, and that can apply to Bike Week or, you know, traveling in Morocco or whatever it is. You know, you don't want to just go over there and say, oh, look, I got that picture, I got that picture, I got that person's picture, I stole a picture. I don't look at it as stealing in terms of trying to get a picture. I'm trying to see the world differently and show people how I see it.
John, can you talk about like how this crosses into fine arts? Then, like, we're talking about maybe documentary photography, but there's people like, do you guys know Nan Golden? Yeah. No, a few of you. Like, you know, do you cross over into fine arts, or where do you think that happens? Or
a little, certainly. I mean,
I feel like those are being blurred right now again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what
you know?
Danielle's talking about, Nan Golden shoots sort of documentary photographs of her friends and in odd contexts. I mean, initially when she started out, she was hanging out with all these drug addicts and people who lived in do you know what, you guys know what squats are, where you basically, you know, 100 people share a building and they don't pay their, you know.
In New York,
And so it's kind of like she was part of that culture and just happened to be a photographer or wanted to be a photographer or something and took pictures. So it's, I think where you're going with this is she's actually part of that scene herself, and they've let her take pictures, you know, of very intimate situations, as opposed to in some of the situations I go in and I'm taking a little piece of this, you know. There's another photographer, Danny Lyon, who photographed motorcycle clubs in the 60s, but he was a member of the motorcycle gang. He, for 2 years, rode around with them, that sort of thing. Shot similar photographs to Bike Week, but had a much more legitimate claim on it, if you will, than I do. And then, you know, I do ride motorcycles, but, you know, this Bike Week is only 10 days, and I go down once a year and run around and take photographs. So that's a bit of a gray area in terms of whether, you know, I mean, who's to say whether Nan Golden's photos are a little more legitimate because she's just documenting her life versus, you know, my friend who started up the erotic club, you know, has hired me since I think we started doing this in 2000 to document her parties. So it's, in terms of what, you're always going to get people that think it's intrusive. I'm being intrusive. I mean, and that plays out at the parties where you get people who get very upset if I try to take a picture of them or something, or you're always going to get people who play up to the camera. And as far as how that works its way into like a documentary context versus an art gallery context, it really has to do with the context. For instance, this photo here, again, just picking on this one because it's up online. This photo here was, at one point, was going to be used for a book cover about, you know, a novel about a biker gang or something like that. But so the art director liked it, and, you know, it's a little showy, it's a little flash, you know, that kind of stuff. But it's but the same photo I have exhibited in an art gallery. So it really depends on context. The drag queen photographs were shot commercially for